Good morning. It's good to see everyone that's here. It's good to see new faces and some familiar faces, not so familiar faces. It's just good to see everyone that is here. If it's your first time here with us, we'd love to get you plugged into a Bible study or answer any questions that you have. Talk to me afterwards. Talk to one of the ushers or something, and we'll help you out the best way that we can. But we are glad that you're here, and we hope that we represent Jesus well and that we can direct you to Him too. Thanksgiving week. That means everybody's finishing up their shopping. They're doing that countdown to family coming over and making sure they have everything lined up. And if you're me, that means you're also preparing your Thanksgiving speech. If you didn't know, for the last 2 years now, I give a history lesson at my house on Thanksgiving. The Pittmans are coming over. Get ready, Pittmans, and so are some others. But I have PowerPoint and everything talking about Thanksgiving. So yeah, you come to my house, you learn something on Thanksgiving and not just eat. So there's that I'm preparing for as well. But it's good that we're thinking about being thankful, whether it be in our families, as a nation, as a world. Anytime that we can be thankful, that is a good thing. Let me remind everybody about small groups. Also tonight, we have a group here at the church building that's now meeting at 5 o'clock. And then there's two 6 p.m. groups, one at the Robinson House and one at the Weatherford home. And then next week, we're going to be doing the combined group. The big group, it's going to be here at the church building. All the groups will come together into the fellowship hall. That's the big cafeteria area back there. We'll have like a potluck dinner, have our time of Bible discussion and singing and stuff like that there. That's next week. So all of your leftover Thanksgiving food, you bring to big groups. See how we did that there? It all works out perfectly with that. But this morning, what I want us to do, as we get into our lesson, we're going to be continuing down the path of talking about kingdom living. As Christians, we are part of a kingdom that is not of this world. As Christians, we serve a different king. As Christians, we live different lives because we're part of a different kingdom. And in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, we have recorded for us a sermon. But it's not like any sermon we've ever read before. This is a sermon given directly by Jesus. It's the longest, most intact sermon that we have recorded for us in Scripture. He goes up on top of a mountain, he sits down on top, and the crowds gather around him, and he speaks to them. Up until this point, they've been wondering, what is he going to say? What is his core message? He's been doing these different miracles. We have these different signs. A lot of us think he could be the Messiah. What is he going to tell us? And he gets up there and he opens his mouth and he begins with the phrase, blessed are the, but he doesn't talk about blessed are the people in the temple. He doesn't talk about blessed are the wealthy. He doesn't talk about blessed are the popular or blessed are the famous or blessed are the powerful. He doesn't say any of that. He goes out on a limb and right off the bat, Matthew chapter 5, he gives a list of people that are blessed and he turns their whole idea of life upside down. Everything that we think of being blessed, and I've been kind of thinking about even the way we normally pray. Oftentimes when we thank God for our blessings, what do we thank for? I have a house, I have a car, I have a job, I have money, I have food. Those are all good things and a gift from God and all of that. But Jesus doesn't even list those as a blessing. What he lists as blessed, or the people that are blessed, are things like this. Poor in spirit. What? That's not blessed. Mournful, or people that are mourning, people that are sad and that kind of stuff. Blessed are the meek or the gentle. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Not blessed are the go-getters. Not blessed are the determined. Not blessed are the powerful. Blessed are the knowledgeable even. He lays out these categories right there. Now, up until this point, looking at all of these, I think all of us probably would look at those and go, okay, I see what Jesus is saying. I might not normally call those things a blessing, but I understand that if I am a merciful person, I will be blessed. We get that. We know that's Christianity stuff, right? We know that as Christians following God, God wants us to be gentle, merciful, peacemakers, pure in heart. That makes sense. We get that. It might not be our normal thing that we say, but we understand those are good character traits. If I say, wow, this person up here is so meek, so merciful, and so pure in heart, you go, that's good. That is a person I would like to be like. We agree with Jesus all up until this point. It makes sense. We see where he's going. He says, it's not these worldly virtues that make you blessed, but it's these heavenly virtues that make you blessed. But then he throws in these next few verses. And we look at this and we go, okay, up until this point, I got you, Jesus, but now I'm not with you anymore. Because look what he says. Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake or for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Hold up. Okay, I get this. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the peacemakers. I get that, Jesus. But blessed are people who are persecuted? What are you talking about? How is that someone that is blessed? No, none of us look at a persecuted person and go, wow, they're sure blessed. None of us do that. We don't say that. But yet Jesus right here says, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. A more modern translation put it this way, I kind of thought it made some good sense. It says, God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right. Righteousness, I get that. Righteousness is doing right. It's being virtuous. It's being holy. It's being like God. It's being good. God blesses those who are doing good. We would get that. That makes sense. But God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right. Why did he throw in the persecuted part? Let's talk about that for a second. This idea of blessing, as we've gone through here, what are the blessings that he's mentioned? As you look through Matthew chapter 5, he's mentioned the blessing of the kingdom of heaven, the blessing of comfort, the blessing of inheriting the earth, the blessing of satisfaction, the blessing of mercy, the blessing of seeing God, the blessing of being called sons of God. So those are all blessings that come from these character traits. God blesses those types of people, righteous people. But here, he says he blesses those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. Up until this point, they're all things that you do. You're the one who is poor in spirit. You're the one who's being, I'm not saying that, oh, look what I deserve or anything like that, but those are things you do. But verse 10, verse 11 is things that are done to you. Think about it. Up until this point, it's all these character traits you have, but these next ones are things that happen to you because of who you are. Persecution, I'm sure you're familiar with the word, it's the idea of harshness towards you, sometimes violence towards you, prejudice towards you because of your religious belief. That's usually kind of how that word is used, and that's how it was used back then. There was religious persecution, there was different religious groups to be driven out and all of that, and early Christianity was wrought with a ton of persecution. Whether it came from the Roman Empire, whether it came from Jewish leaders, early Christians were persecuted. Many were killed for their faith. Many were arrested. Many were driven out of their homes. There was financial persecution. There's all of that going on. But he says, God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right. Why? What's with that? Let's look at the next verse. Maybe it explains it more. Verse 11. Blessed are you. Okay, maybe he's going to tell us something good now. Blessed are you when people insult you. What? Again? Blessed are you when people insult you or persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Now he takes it to another tier here a little bit. So it's not just, okay, people that have bad things happen to them when they're doing what is right or blessed, maybe we understand that. Okay, people that are doing what's right and they still have bad things happen, that's okay, they're still doing what's right. But then he gets specific. Blessed are you when people insult you. You ever been insulted? We don't like that. We don't like people talking about us. We don't like people saying things about us. That's like the worst. When someone goes out there and they're spreading things about you, according to this, falsely saying all kinds of evil against you. So they're spreading rumors that aren't true. Man, fast forward to today. You know how quick rumors get spread now online and social media? You want to get canceled? Boom, you're done, right? False lies spread about you. Here he says, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. So he lays this out. Now, when we look at this, there would be then an assumption that that's going to happen. That if we are doing what is right, if I am practicing righteousness, which, by the way, the entire sermon, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, is about righteousness. The key verse, chapter 5, verse 20, I think it's the key verse, says, that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So we're supposed to be righteous. But while we're righteous, persecution is going to happen. You're going to be insulted. People are going to lie about you. They're going to spread things falsely because of you. They're going to do all kinds of evil against you because of me. But yet, he says here a couple things. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. And later on, in verse 12, he's going to tell them to rejoice. How and why? Why would we look at persecution, suffering, as an opportunity for blessing? Humans won't. We wouldn't normally do that. That's why the Sermon on the Mount turns our whole viewpoints upside down. We would never look at hardship and go, that's nice. Persecution, that's good. I like when that happens. You know what? I'm blessed when I overcome persecution. I guarantee, even if you were to ask those in the first century, for the most part, even when they were going through persecution, they wouldn't go, you know what, we're so blessed. They go, I wish this would stop. I mean, they would. That's common sense. So how in the world is this suffering, is persecution, a blessing? First point I want us to see this morning is this. In the middle of suffering, so I'm using the word suffering, it's synonymous with persecution here. So in the middle of persecution, so something is happening to you, an external force is coming upon you outside of your control. If you are doing what is right, and we're going to keep coming back to this idea, if you are doing what is right, because sometimes you're persecuted because you're a bad person, okay? But we're talking about this. If you are persecuted for doing what is right, you can rejoice. Why? Because you're not alone in it. Let's talk about it. Next verse. Verse 12, he says, rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way, you might not be able to make it out on the screen because it's small font, but it says, in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So we're persecuted. According to this passage, it seems like it's kind of an assumption. And even when I go through the New Testament, it looks like it's a pretty good assumption. Paul says, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. So while we are being persecuted, we can stop and go, you know what? I'm going through the same thing that Jeremiah went through, that Elijah went through, that these prophets went through, that Jesus went through, that the apostles went through. I am not alone. Others have been there before. And we can look back at their stories, and what do we see? They persevered. They made it through. They became stronger because of it. Don't we like a good story of overcoming adversity? We love those kinds of stories. Remember that movie that came out? Man, I'm old now. I was going to say, it came out a few years ago, probably came out 20 years ago now. The movie The Pursuit of Happiness, about that investment stockbroker, but it was played by Will Smith. And that's a cool movie. And I saw some clips from the other day. And it talks about how this man who basically was homeless at one point, him and his son had to sleep in the bathroom at a subway station, and now he's a prominent investment broker or something like that. He made it to that point. We love stories like that, of people that have overcome hardship and adversity. We like reading the stories of the prophets and what they went through and how they hung in there. We love a good missionary story, right? Because we have pretty cushy lives here, but when the missionaries come here and they talk about where it's like in other places, and we're like, wow, look at how tough it is. They've made it through that. I can do better. We understand this idea. Jesus here says you can rejoice because you're not alone. They persecuted the prophets before you. But let's back up to the other part there on the screen. He says, rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. Later on, Jesus would talk about whoever receives a prophet in my name will receive a prophet's reward. In the same way that the prophets were persecuted, we know they got a reward in heaven. We know guys like Elijah went there. What about us? Rejoice, for your reward in heaven is great. Again, though, this isn't the way we normally look at suffering. When something bad is happening in our life, there's a force coming against us, and if it's coming because we're Christians, we don't normally go, wow, I'm probably going to have some blessing that comes out of this. We don't normally look at that. What we normally do is complain, we whine, and we quit. But Jesus here says we should rejoice. What is it? It's an upside-down way of thinking. So first point of our lesson this morning is this. In the midst of persecution, you can still find a reason to rejoice because you're not alone. Others have gone through it and they overcame it, and so can you. That's point number one. Point number two, though. This is the one that we need to also work on some. Suffering or persecution, I use the word suffering because it doesn't take up as much room on the screen. Suffering does not mean you are righteous. I want to point that out. Persecution does not necessarily mean you are righteous. Because if you look at this passage, it says, those that are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Persecution does not mean you are righteous. You could be suffering. You could be being persecuted because of your own actions. This is where we get uncomfortable a little bit. It's on purpose. Because look what Jesus says. Let's look at the couple clarifiers. Blessed are you when you're persecuted for righteousness' sake. I think it was the NIV that had it as for doing what is right. Okay. If you're doing what is wrong and you are persecuted, that's not good. That's not rejoice and be glad for your reward in heaven is great. That's, no, you got what's coming, right? I mean, that's kind of what it means. So here, persecuted for righteousness' sake. Look at the other one. Blessed are you when men, say all kinds of evil against you falsely because of me. Sometimes people are saying the truth about you, okay? You might not like it. It might be something that you're not necessarily proud of, but here it's false things are being said about you. If people are saying the truth about you and it's causing persecution, maybe you need to fix something. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. And here's what happens. Christians, especially in America, because that's where we are. Some preach to American Christians. I'm not preaching to Christians in Afghanistan right now that are going through some real persecution. We don't have persecution like the people in the Bible had here in America. We have it pretty easy. So I think sometimes we crave kind of a martyrdom in some way. We like being victims, and we like whining about when maybe people aren't pro-Christian anymore. We've been so lucky that we've had maybe it's not lucky, maybe it's been a curse all along, but we've been so lucky that, well, everybody's always, yeah, you go to church, I do too, that's good, I like Jesus. Go Team Jesus. And now when maybe cultural shifts get away from that, we start calling that persecution. We go, oh, they made fun of Christians on TV. Not persecution. All of a sudden, people are questioning certain things. That's persecution. That's not persecution. Being hauled out of your car because you own a New Testament and shot and killed by the Taliban, that's persecution. I'll give you that one. But an episode of The Simpsons where they made a joke about Jesus isn't right, but it's not persecution. Churches and Christians have a tendency, we do, to play the victim and say it's persecution because it makes us feel good when really, sometimes we might even bring it upon ourselves. Let me give you a few because my job as a preacher is to make people uncomfortable and step on toes. Here's one. I've been seeing a lot of articles about churches losing nonprofit status. And then I hear everybody start spouting off like, that's persecution. They're coming after the churches. They're going to shut us all down. They're anti-Christian. But a lot of it is because churches funnel a whole bunch of money into a bunch of stuff and build private airports, and their pastors have giant jumbo jets. And it's all tax-free. And people look at that and go, hold up. There's something wrong there. No one questions the people that are feeding the poor in their community. No one questions the people when the budgets go toward helping people, widows and orphans. No one has a problem with that. But when churches have massive budgets and money coming in that's all not being used to do good, people start questioning, maybe they should pay taxes. That's not persecution. That's maybe the church kind of got what's coming to it because maybe they haven't been good stewards of money. The one I always hear, because I'm in the preacher world, if you didn't know, preachers get certain tax breaks with parsonage allowances, and housing isn't taxable and some stuff like that. It goes way back to churches owning houses on properties. It doesn't really happen anymore. There's always questions about, is that going to go away? And then you read an article, and they show some mega church prosperity pastor guy who has a $40 million mansion that isn't taxable or something like that. That's his third one. And they go, well, that's not right. That's probably not persecution. That might be, well, what goes around kind of comes around a little bit. And then sometimes what happens is this. We as Christians get called out on things that we are wrong on. Being called out on sin is not persecution. If people say something like, you guys are so judgmental, maybe we are. And we should stop for a second and go, maybe they're right. Because you know what? Sometimes Christians can be judgmental. I mean, if we're walking around with signs telling everybody you're going to hell, that doesn't really help our cause. I could see how people would think that's judgmental, and maybe the accusation is something we deserve. Arrogant. Sometimes Christians can come across as arrogant. Well, I'm right, you're wrong. Can be seen if it's not done properly, as arrogance. Hypocrisy. We say one thing and we live another way. We tolerate this sin over here because we're doing it or our favorite people are doing it, but we speak out against this sin over here because the people we don't like are engaging in that sin. This social cause we like, this one we don't. This person, this candidate, whoever it is, we can act hypocritical at times. And then when people say Christians are hypocrites, we go, it's persecution, just like the first century. No, maybe we're just being called out, which, by the way, in the Sermon on the Mount, you know who Jesus calls out? People who are judgmental, arrogant, and hypocritical. In chapter 5, verse 20, he says, for I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, judgmental, hypocritical, arrogant, that was the scribes and the Pharisees. And you know what? They always acted like the victim and everybody's out to get us, and that's why we have to shut down Jesus. Same kind of thing. He says, unless you're better than them, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. The point of the Sermon on the Mount is we must do better than those types of people. We have to live better. We have to do better by doing what is right. And here's the point. If we do better than the scribes and the Pharisees by actually living right, actually living how Jesus did, actually doing all the things of the previous 6 verses of being poor in spirit, mourning, gentle, hunger and thirsting for righteousness, merciful, pure in heart, peacemakers. If we're doing all those things and we're still persecuted, that's okay. And that's kind of what I see here in this passage. If we're living a better life, if we're living a righteous life, if we're living a life different than the scribes and the Pharisees, a life characterized by doing what is right, that's righteousness, doing the Beatitudes, as he talks about here, if then we are still persecuted, that's okay. We can rejoice because we're doing what's right. We can rejoice because our reward in heaven is great. And we can rejoice because we are not alone. That's why he says here, blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's not that persecution is a blessing. It's not. It's not a blessing to be hurt or harmed or things like that. Blessings can come from it, but that in and of itself is not a blessing. Nobody in being hurt for their faith will go, I'm so blessed to have this instance happen to me. Persecution is not a blessing, but we will be blessed with a heavenly reward if we are persecuted for doing what is right. Jesus said, rejoice and be glad. Not about the persecution, but rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. We can have blessings in the heavens if we're living what's right and persecution still happens. If we're being meek, peacemakers, humble, pure in heart, and all of that, and someone still says evil about us, that's okay. We know that we're blessed. If we're standing up for what is right, helping out the less fortunate, and doing good, and people still speak out against the church or even try to do us harm, that's okay. We're doing what's right. And in the same way they persecuted the prophets, they're persecuting us too. That might not be the way you want to live. I mean, the thought of possibly being persecuted is not something I look forward to. But I'm part of the Lord's kingdom. And in Christ's kingdom, we live differently. We suffer sometimes. We'll be persecuted sometimes. We'll stand up for what is right and we'll avoid what is wrong. We will engage in behaviors that the world thinks is strange. Why would you be humble? Why would you be meek? Why would you be a peacemaker? Just go out there and take control. Just go out there and be famous. Just go out there and gain power. No, Jesus says no. Have these character traits and you will be blessed. And if you're engaging in these behaviors and you're still persecuted, you are still blessed because they did the same thing to the prophets too. The lesson is yours this morning. And the lesson for us is this. Let's be people that live lives in such a way that even if persecution comes, we know that it's not because we're living wrong or that we've done something bad or that we got what's coming to us. But if we live a holy, righteous, and godly life and people still are against us, we've done what we could do. And in that, we can rejoice and be glad because we're having the same faith that Jesus had and the same faith as the apostles. But let's also make sure that the persecution that we are receiving, first and foremost, if it's real persecution or not, and number two, is it just a response to something in our life that we need to fix? There's been a song that's been selected. Let's all stand together and let's sing.